Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? Full from lunch? Still riding high on that energy from the welcoming opening ceremony this morning? I thought that was just fantastic, really energizing. I'm carrying that energy with me throughout the rest of the day. So good afternoon, welcome. My name is Chris McAvoy. I will be your moderator this afternoon. I hope you're well, and I'm really looking forward to the conversations and presentations this afternoon. I hope you are as well. So I'd like to begin by stating that the City of Halifax is situated in the Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. So the theme of this session that we're about to hear from this afternoon is leadership, improvement, and change management. So we're here today to hear from 3 communities who are implementing creative ways to access and utilize community housing to end experiences of homelessness. So today's 3 presentations will focus on alignment between by-name lists and community housing wait lists, a move from unit-based rental supplements to portable housing benefits, rapid rehousing, and choice-based letting, and partnerships for support for the activities of daily living. So first we'll hear from Trish, Yolissa, and Jen from the City of Toronto on the topic of testing solutions in testing times. We'll then hear from Jesse from the City of London on proactive strategies and collaborative solutions, transforming approaches to community housing to prevent and end homelessness. And finally, we'll hear from Tiffany and Daryl from Halton Region, and their presentation will be focused on homelessness to RGI with enhanced home help supports. So we did start a little bit late this afternoon by 15 minutes, which means we will extend by 15 minutes. I'll do my best to keep things on track and on time, so we're looking to end at about 3:15. Each group, each community will have 20-minute presentations. They will just start and roll one into the other. Please save all of your questions till the end. Presenters, just so you know, I do have a gong and I will be banging it at the 20-minute mark, so we save that time at the end for Q&A. Okay, you didn't come here to hear from me, you came here to hear from these folks. So Trish, Yolissa, and Jen, I'll turn the mic over to you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Yolissa DeJager with the City of Toronto, and I'll get into some more introductions in just a moment. I first want to acknowledge that we are very grateful to be here, and a big thank you to Halifax and to the Mi'kmaq people for inviting and welcoming us on their territory. Before we get started, we traditionally in Toronto, we do a land acknowledgement as well, and an African ancestral acknowledgement. So I'm going to go through that, and then we'll get started with our presentation. So the 3 of us, we live and work on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And Toronto is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Williams Treaties signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Additionally, though I'm not a person of African descent, I am committed to continually acting in support of and in solidarity with Black communities, seeking freedom and reparative justice in light of history and ongoing legacy of slavery that continues to impact Black communities in Canada. As part of this commitment, I would also like to acknowledge that not all people came to these lands as migrants and settlers. And specifically, I wish to acknowledge those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. In support of the City of Toronto's ongoing efforts to confront anti-Black racism, which I'm sure many of us share in this room, I pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. All right.
I don't think ours turns it out. I think it has to be here.
Oh. Let me see? Okay. Oh, let's see here. Okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, my name is Yolissa DeJager. I am the Manager of Access to Housing with the City of Toronto with the Housing Secretariat, and I'll pass it to my colleagues here.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. Jen St. Louis, and I work with Yolissa in the Housing Secretariat. I am also a manager in Housing Stability Services, and happy to be here representing Toronto. And by the way, we usually do get gonged when we're representing Toronto, so it's okay. We're used to it.
And I'm Trish Lenz. I'm not sure that our slides are actually changing. Maybe.
I think we have to go down there.
I'm Trish. I'm the manager of coordinated access at the City of Toronto. Also happy to be here. Maybe if we could get some technical help to just get our slides changing, that would be great. But I'll briefly go over why are you here today? So you're here to learn about our rapid rehousing program that we launched in Toronto in the middle of a global pandemic. So we wanted to share with you a bit about the program, but then also what we learned throughout that process, our successes and especially our failures. So where we learned things that we want to share with all of you, if you're either seeking to launch your own rapid rehousing program, or if you already have launched it and you're looking to tweak it a bit. And then finally, we want to talk about how we are going to leverage our model, the work that we're doing to make things even better within our rapid rehousing program, but also to bring in different supports for folks experiencing homelessness within our community.
I'm not able to find the cursor.
Okay. Can we just press enter?
Give it a try.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Okay, so why are you here? That's why you're here, to learn about rapid rehousing. So what was our testing time? Our testing time was that it was a global pandemic. We have quite a few people, unfortunately, experiencing homelessness within Toronto. And we were looking for a way to leverage the resources we have within the City of Toronto's purview to create more housing opportunities for folks who are experiencing homelessness.
Thanks, Trish. So some of the testing times we were dealing with, a lot of these kind of situations on the slide you'll be very familiar with, things like unaffordable rents. We had a 1.1% vacancy rate in 2019 when we started doing this work. As Trish mentioned, COVID-19 changed a lot of things for the most vulnerable people in our community. Homelessness on the rise. We had, I think at this point, we have over 10,000, is that right? 10,000 people on the by name list, and about 85,000 households on the wait list for rent geared to income housing. As well as some kind of common interjurisdictional issues, we were also dealing with some Toronto-specific issues. So we had a number of audit reports from our own internal City of Toronto auditor that highlighted some of the inefficiencies in the RGI waitlist system, particularly that folks were waiting a very long time, and that we were making multiple offers to people before actually getting a household housed. And in response to that, we were working on rolling out a new technology to manage our waitlist system and switching over to a choice-based system, and Yolissa's going to talk more about that in the coming slides. As well, we had a particularly high vacancy rate in social housing in bachelor units, and most specifically in the seniors units. So that was the context we were working in.
Okay. All right, so as Jen mentioned, in the world of the centralized wait list, we were rolling out a new technology. We were modernizing how we apply and allocate our GI units. And in 2022, the City of Toronto introduced choice space. So before, applicants would apply, they would fill out their paper application, they would select their building preferences, submit that, be approved, and then wait maybe 10 years, and then get a call about one of those buildings that they put on their preferences. Simplifying it, but generally that was the gist. And so we were shifting over now to a system where we posted real-time vacancies, and we invited applicants to go online, maintain their application online, but come into this module and see real-time vacancies, review units, and express interest on the units that meet their household needs. So while we were rolling this out, we had to phase in the wait list. We couldn't invite everybody on our wait list because, as we mentioned, it was 85,000 households, and we only had about 3,000 units a year. So we had to kind of get the right balance of applicants invited into choice space based on their chronological application date, as well as their priority status. And what we found initially is that our 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, or larger units, they were being connected to people very quickly. The system was working wonderfully for these units and for these applicants at the time. But we had a growing issue with bachelor units, and then as we dug into it a bit further, senior bachelor units. And we knew that we had to expand our invitation further into the wait list, but we wanted to also make sure that we were balancing sort of your opportunity to actually land a unit. So it was a bit of a struggle to get the right mix in this choice-based module. So what we decided to do is to create a few off-ramps in our system to help connect people to these available units that weren't being picked up by the chronological or top priority applicants. And so we expanded our invitation pool to the choice-based module to more homeless applicants. So you'll see on the slide here, the cars are the bachelor units coming into the cycle. The first opportunity is that they would be picked up by either our priority applicants or our chronological applicants. If this pool did not express interest on these units, the units would then be offered in the same cycle to applicants who were experiencing homelessness, and maybe their application was a lot newer than everybody else in that group. If we didn't make a connection or a match at this stage, and the unit went through this cycle twice, we were able to redirect the majority of these units to our rapid rehousing program, and they would take these units offline and work with their shelter partners to find somebody where this unit was a good match. All right, I'm going to pass it to you.
So then just a quick overview of our rapid rehousing program in Toronto. So who does it serve? It serves folks who are experiencing homelessness, both sheltered and sleeping out on our streets. So we work with our shelter providers and also street outreach. And it's really a program of partnerships. So it's City of Toronto staff who help to run the program to make the matches into the units, but we also work very closely with our social housing providers, Toronto Community Housing and Toronto Seniors Housing. We work with the Furniture Bank, and we work with all of our support providers within the City of Toronto who help to provide post-housing follow-up supports for up to 12 months for folks who are living in the rapid rehousing units. And what we found through this program is that we have a very great success rate of keeping people housed through this model of affordable housing with supports in place for the year.
So this slide shows a timeline of kind of where we were at, how we got to where we are now. So I guess importantly, the rapid rehousing launched in March of 2020 and was made up entirely of redeployed staff from City of Toronto divisions. So Trish and I were both lucky parts of that initial team, which was pretty exhausting and exciting, and we'll talk more about why that really helped in the innovation of this model. The RGI applicant portal launched in 2021, so another important part of this, and that was where folks could apply online to the RGI waitlist, and that involved a lot of training of both individuals and community partners. A very exciting thing happened in Q2 of 2021 where the city hired a permanent team to work in rapid rehousing. So for those of us who had been redeployed, it was a chance for us to go back to our regular jobs. And then a new team would take over from us. And that was really a process of making this a permanent feature of how the city works with and for homeless folks. Another important part along our journey was the adoption of a priority by City Council, whereas one of every 5 households housed would have a priority, and we can answer questions specifically about that later, but most of those people are homeless people. Anything else you guys want to add, any high level? We were almost going to skip this slide because we thought it would go on too long, but I think we'll just keep motoring. Oh, it's still me. Yeah, you're stuck with me for a little while longer. So some of the lessons, we thought it was really important to share some of the lessons learned, but to be real about some of the challenges, whether it be, you know, within the city, working with other agencies, or working with our counselors in the city. So one of the lessons that we learned was that relationships matter and that we should focus on people. And that was really evident in building the program. So as I mentioned, the initial program was made up of staff from redeployed from lots of different areas. So what that really meant was fresh ideas. There were some of us who were former frontline workers who now worked in more of a policy capacity, others who had never worked frontline. And that really, I think, gave us the opportunity to well, we were moving so fast to implement really interesting and new parts of the program. The sense of urgency really, I think, gave us the leverage to try new things. For the very first time ever in my career, money wasn't an object. I think that the focus was on people, and I think that you know, the city was under the impression that perhaps the province would help us fund some of these expenses. So there seemed to be a lot of will to just get it done, which was super helpful. We didn't really have a roadmap, so we were just doing what we could anytime we could, which, you know, whether that meant using my basement for a storage locker for supplies for units, Trish and I waiting outside Walmart for, you know, 2 hours to get in to buy 50 pillows to have the homing solution completed. We wanted folks to move into a fully furnished house, so that included not just furniture, but housewares, an initial supply of cleaning supplies, all things that were kind of challenging to get in a pandemic. But also, you know, we wanted this to be as easy as possible. I think centering the client and delivering the program, we really focused on meeting the clients where they were at. So our frontline housing workers were going out to shelters to meet with people, going to sign leases with people. We were kind of constantly responding to challenges. So, you know, as part of the legislation in Ontario for rent geared to income housing, you have to produce a lot of documents. Some of those documents were really challenging to get, I mean, in general, but also in a pandemic when offices were closed. And so we had to be a lot more flexible than us in government usually are, which was really an interesting learning experience and allowed us to develop the permanent program with a lot more flexibility, I think, than we would have. There were flexibilities in viewings and lease signings. We kind of went when people were able to go. We had a lot of frontline contact with superintendents in the units and making sure that units were prepared. So I think that there was at the beginning a bit of a communication disconnect between, you know, what was showing up as the system as rentable and what was actually rentable. So we had a lot of direct communication with frontline staff like supers and housing workers that we potentially wouldn't have had otherwise. I'm going to ask Trish if there's anything you want to add, because you were there too.
No, that's it. That's
it. Okay. Thanks.
So the second big lesson that we learned was that good communication doesn't mean that you're the one speaking. So as I mentioned before, Rapid Rehousing is a partnership. It's a program that needs a lot of people running it, a lot of different departments at the city, folks within social housing, the furniture bank, all of our support providers. So as we were building Oh, sorry. Oh, okay, got it. As we were building, we're going to step this up, folks. As we were building the program, we didn't always get this one right? It was a pandemic. There was a lot of high energy in many, many rooms. And so I think a big takeaway for us that we want to share with all of you is that it's important to commit to ongoing, thoughtful communication with all of your partners. And I know that seems really intuitive and like we're all adults in the room and we all communicate, but especially when you're building new programs, it's a key insight of like who comes to the table, who's speaking, who's listening, and then as you roll out the program and you keep it going, committing to keeping doing that. So we're 3 years in now and we need to constantly remind ourselves to listen to our partners, to communicate well with our partners. So that was a really, really big takeaway for us.
So another lesson was to take what we've learned from these iterative approaches, from these pilots, and find ways to solidify it. So I'm going to speak to some ways where we were able to sort of get a foothold and retain the advantages that we had found through the testing phase. So one of the things I wanted to highlight is that in July 2022, we had a report go to council where we made some adjustments to our local priorities. So we had before a local priority for applicants that were experiencing homelessness, and they would get a 1 in 7 offer, which translates to about 15% of all units that were filled off the centralized wait list would be dedicated to someone experiencing homelessness. And we were able to increase that to 1 in 5, which means we have now a 20% commitment of RGI units to individuals and households experiencing homelessness. But more than just the increased commitment, we also were able to, how do I say this, solidify flexibility. It seems like a bit of an oxymoron, but we were able to build in flexibility and wording in our report, which was adopted by council, to align our work with coordinated access. So we are able to take a look at that 20% target, work with our housing providers, and see where we can either better align with rapid rehousing or better align with other upcoming initiatives that coordinated access may be rolling out. And one of the other examples of sort of solidifying these testing times and the learnings that we had gathered from it was to set up a number of different workflows or processes. So one I'll highlight here is a cross-reference activity that we do against our centralized wait list, so the 85,000 households, against the by name list. And that way, it's one mechanism where we can identify if we have an applicant who has become homeless and automatically apply the homeless priority or refresh a homeless priority. But it was also a mechanism to gather more data and work more closely with our shelter partners to either target our rapid rehousing program more specifically or to work on some general activities such as increasing applications for RGI housing.
So we're running out of time, but we'll just quickly share. We got 1 minute to go, folks. We're doing this. So our last lesson to share with you is to commit to ongoing improvement to making the program better. So in Toronto, that's meant after we got the rapid rehousing program set, we've been able to leverage it to try pilot programs, to tinker with how we deliver coordinated access and match people to units through our rapid rehousing program. So the first example is our 92 Peter Street pilot, which focused on a different way of delivering units for youth. So acknowledging that coordinated access doesn't work for all populations in the same way. It's like, how can we tweak things to better serve the youth population? And our second example, which I'm going to gloss over for time, is that we started to introduce follow-up supports earlier in the housing journey. So whereas before it was like post-housing, we first tried it with seniors clustered units where we brought folks in right at the lease signing and viewing in order to meet the person that they would be supporting for the year. Seems simple, but it was a change we made to the system that has really stuck for people, and now in 2023 we're rolling it out across the entire system. So that's our fourth and final lesson to share with all of you. As a quick wrap up, we've had a lot of successes to date. So since we launched in 2020, the program has housed 1,725 units within our social housing system, which translates to 2,428 people. And there's a 0.9% rate of folks losing their housing through the LTB process, which is a really great success, right? We know it's a challenge to transition from homelessness into housing, and I think that low percentage point is really a testament to follow-up supports and all that they do to help stabilize folks when they're moving into housing.
And on the choice-based side, at the end of 2022, when we look back at our data, we had housed the most people, or the most units ever in 1 year through the choice-based model, and the mechanisms that we put in place to ensure a connection to units also allowed us to have the highest housing outcomes specifically for applicants experiencing homelessness. We drove down the number of offers needed to fill a unit. It was overall 6, but for bachelor units it was north of 9, 10. But now it would take 1-2 calls and we would find somebody for a unit. And we were also able to increase the overall number of people in the shelter system who had an application with us. And that's some ongoing work that we're doing.
So I'm really going to wrap it up in a few minutes, but some of the things that we're doing to leverage the model are really to take the lessons learned and spread them out to support more people. And 2 of the ways we're doing that are through anchor agencies in social housing. So, you know, through the work with Rapid Housing, we've really seen the benefit of matching, you know, 1 tenant with 1 follow-up support worker, but we realize there are also communities that need support. So we're looking at how to leverage the follow-up support agencies to better support communities. Another pilot we're looking at is exploring how social medicine can be embedded in communities where there are lots of people who have been housed from homelessness who maybe require more than just that follow-up support. So things like community medicine, primary health care, mental health support. So I think we'll end there, and obviously we're here for questions, so I'll pass it off to Jesse, and you can hear from the City of London. I think you're just ready to go.
Okay, perfect. Is my slide up there? Yeah. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Jessie Ford. I'm the manager of rent supplement and tenant selection at the City of London. So I manage our housing access center. And today I'll be sharing some of the changes that the Housing Access Center has gone through over the past 1.5 years, the ways we're supporting people to reach the right housing at the right time, and how we're using technology to support our teams and our community. Also how we're supporting our frontline staff through these changes. So bear with me here. This thing's a little touchy. So the City of London is situated on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, the Lunapawak, and Attawandaron. London is currently home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. As a representative of the City of London, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in the territory and to be a visitor here today. So London has a population of about 420,000 people. We're the fastest growing city in Ontario and one of the fastest growing cities in the country. We have high numbers of students who attend Western University and Fanshawe College. And so we have a huge influx of people who need housing every September. So like other communities, we have increasing challenges with housing affordability, increasing pressures in our healthcare system, aging community housing stock, and a poison drug supply crisis. Our frontline workers are exhausted and stretched, as are our leaders and community members. Despite these challenges, we've worked really hard over the last 1.5 years to make some changes, and longer than 1.5 years. So London was the first city in Canada to reach functional zero in veterans homelessness. And we've just been going through a lot of changes looking at how we can improve things and revamping our community housing system. So I'm going to talk a bit about that. So within housing stability services at the City of London, we have several areas. There's the coordinated access team, the coordinated informed response team, which supports all of our folks who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. We have a programs team and a HIFAS team, and they sort of support our community with the various programs that we have. So my team is the Housing Access Center, and we manage the rent geared to income waitlist and rent supplements. And as part of social and health development, London's Housing Stability Services is responsible for the human services side of housing and homelessness, while we have our municipal housing development team, who is more the bricks and mortar side of things. So where my team works is sort of right in this area here. And we also work closely with the other teams in our department. And this is sort of just a high level what most of the work that we do kind of looks like on my team. So our wait list has over 6,100 households, representing about 13,000 individuals waiting for community housing. Average wait times are about 3 to 6 years, but can be considerably longer for larger families, just because we have fewer large units in our stock, and also families tend to stay longer. In Ontario, special priority is given to households who are fleeing abuse or human trafficking, and those households represent about 3% of our list. We have local rules for urgent populations, so people who are experiencing homelessness, people with urgent medical needs, and then people with urgent social needs. And those the urgent social tends to be folks who don't fit into the special priority for abuse and human trafficking. So until very recently, we prioritized the urgent populations to be housed at a rate of 9 urgent households to every 1 chronological. But without enough supports, we were finding that this was creating a lot of challenges in our community housing buildings. So yesterday, Council voted to change this ratio to 2 urgent households to every 8 chronological as a temporary measure until we can complete a review of all of our waitlist practices, which is underway right now. So it's really important that we are supporting households to be successful, especially within our RGI housing stock, because we find that if people burn their bridge with RGI housing, it can be really hard for them to get back in the future if they have arrears or they've caused damages and those kinds of things. So I worked in social services for over 20 years before starting my job with the City of London in April 2022. And when I started with the city, it was a bit of a culture shock for me. I wasn't used to the highly administrative nature of city work, and something became glaringly obvious to me within my first couple of weeks. My team needed to find ways to put people over paper. The administrative weight of the amount of paper my team was handling on a daily basis that meant that time wasn't spent on ensuring that the community understood what we did or understood the processes that we had in place. And this just led to a lot of frustration internally and externally. There was like this significant amount of time being spent managing paper, and that also meant that the community members who needed extra support with things weren't getting it because all of our time was spent dealing with paper. So when I say we needed to put people over paper, what I'm talking about is a lot of paper. So my team of 10 was handling many paper applications, special priority and urgent forms, and what we call loose papers, which I soon found out was like the worst thing. So loose papers are like phone number and address changes, household member changes, annual review forms and appeal forms, and the huge backlog that we had accumulated had been going on for years, and at times it would take us like a year to process your applications. You wouldn't even find out for a year if you were eligible for housing, which like just isn't okay. So, so we started to work on that. So we started to map our processes and review our data, and we soon discovered that nearly 50% of our applications that we were receiving were incomplete. And of that 50%, only half of those ever completed them. So this meant that half of the work we were doing never resulted in success for the household and was essentially a waste of our time. Instead of manually inputting the data from incomplete applications into our system and then sending them a letter with the hope that the applicant would eventually submit the missing documentation, a decision was made to stop accepting incomplete applications. If someone presented at our front counter with an incomplete application, our public-facing coordinated access team would explain to them what was missing and ask them to return with the missing documentation and the application, because we don't want to hold on to it. We have too much paper. I mentioned that, right? And so if it arrived by mail, we would log that it came in, and then we would send the entire thing back with a template letter that indicated what was missing and what we needed. Email had a similar process. Fax, well, we turned off our fax machine because it was 2022. And I'm pleased to report that beginning in September 2023, we had eliminated the backlog and we're processing all applications within under 2 weeks. And this week, as of yesterday, my team is telling me we're processing in about real time. So we continued to map our processes to streamline and modernize our work. We implemented an online applicant portal, eliminated the use of spreadsheets for logging applications and other records, and we signed on to our city's CRM system, and we're going to look at what some of those technologies that we're using now are shortly. So to understand the process of streamlining our work and working more closely with the coordinated access team, it might help to understand where we came from, where we are now, and where we think we want to be. In 2019, restructuring took place at the City of London, and the Housing Access Centre, which had been under our municipal housing development team, moved over to Housing Stability Services. It made sense to put the housing with the people who needed the housing. So the Housing Access Centre could now work more closely with coordinated access and through their work to assess and connect our clients to the right housing at the right time. So coordinated access also operates our front door. So anybody who comes into our system typically would connect with coordinated access first. So when someone calls Housing Stability Services or comes to our front counter, the coordinated access team can help answer general questions about RGI housing, the application process, and assisting them with understanding what other programs, such as rent supplement, might be a good match for them. Coordinated access can access our RGI waitlist database and can tell a community member if their application has been processed and provide just general assistance with understanding notices they've received and answer other questions they might have. And this creates an opportunity for additional conversations and supports if needed. So as we work through streamlining our RGI application processes, finding ways to better assess housing and support need, we're working to align our practices. And we anticipate that the outcome will create a better system for ensuring that regardless of the way that someone enters our system expressing housing need, we'll have a common language and common needs assessments, which will help people to get their housing of choice, to get to their housing of choice, and ensure that the right level of support is in place to ensure success. So we have developed and continue to create partnerships to increase pathways for everyone who enters our system to get where they need to go. We're increasingly working with developers to sort moves into affordable units, sometimes with a rent supplement, and exploring ways to support the influx of newcomers into our community. We're enhancing our partnerships with the justice system, developmental services, and healthcare, and we're working to repair and reimagine our relationship with the Indigenous community. So while we were doing all of those things, we also did a review of our rent supplement system. We had several different rent supplements, and those included unit-based supplements and portable housing allowances through our housing support programs. So in some instances, some of our unit-based landlords were sort of exiting the system. They can get way more money if they sort of go off on their own. So this made funds available for portable benefits, which can be connected to people rather than units. And regardless of the source or parameters of the funding, the goal of our new system, which was approved by Council in October, is to ensure clarity for the community. The portable benefits will be flexible and are calculated based on 80% of actual average asking rents for unoccupied units rather than AMR or average market rent. There are also funds allotted for tenant insurance and utilities expenses. So now I'm going to pass things over to my colleague Erica, who's going to talk to you about the ways we've implemented new technologies over the past year or so.
Thanks, Jessie. Hello, everyone. I'm Erica, and I'm not real. I'm an AI, but I've been working closely with Jessie and her team. At the City of London, our housing and homelessness programs are increasingly using technologies to assist us and our community. We use tools like artificial intelligence, CRM, and HIFIS to improve our customer service, data collection, and workflow. We also recently implemented an online portal for RGI housing applicants. Our CRM system serves as an invaluable tool for efficiently resolving customer issues in many departments across the city. It also equips us with crucial statistical data for optimizing resource management, enabling us to allocate services where they are most needed. The Housing Access Center employs CRM to track and manage all incoming paper forms, while Coordinated Access uses it to log calls and email inquiries. The Coordinated Informed Response Team, which supports individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness, uses CRM to track calls about encampments. They also employ mapping tools in Power BI to monitor their work and identify areas of concern. We utilize AI tools to assist us in drafting communications, generating ideas, and conducting research. This technology not only improves the quality of our content, but also enables us to produce engaging videos like the one you're currently watching. We are in the process of creating similar public-facing videos to enhance customer engagement and make information more readily available. Such videos offer increased accessibility and understanding. They can be translated into various languages and captioned. These visual guides help the community better understand complex processes. Additionally, we are developing internal training videos for our staff to share best practices, ensure consistent messaging, and provide a reliable reference back to processes when needed. A working group at the City of London is exploring the ethical use of artificial intelligence as we navigate these new technological opportunities. Like many communities, we use HIFIS. In London, HIFIS is a database shared between shelters, housing programs, and City of London teams. This system reduces the need for people to repeatedly tell their stories, enables us to locate individuals as they move through the system, reduce the duplication of services, and to verify important information when it's needed. HIFIS is utilized by 11 distinct organizations, many of which operate multiple programs. The platform continually welcomes new programs and organizations. The Housing Access Center is relatively new to HIFIS and has been using it to contact clients when housing providers can't locate someone for an offer of RGI housing, to verify status in Canada and income, and to input housing records when someone is housed, removing them from the by name list. The online applicant portal is a recent addition to our system and plays a critical role in modernizing our processes. RGI applicants can use the portal to submit their applications, update contact information, complete annual reviews, and check their building preferences. This not only minimizes paper usage, but also empowers applicants to manage their own information, reducing the volume of calls and emails to our team. We will continue to find ways to innovate, modernize, and improve our systems for our community. I think that's it. And I'll pass it back to you, Jesse.
It's also a very handy way to get part of your presentation at a conference spoken for you, so she didn't mention that though. Okay, so I just talked about a lot of change that my team and our department went through over the last year and a half, and I'm not going to get into specific change management models. You're welcome to research those on your own, but I can say that all of the members of my team are represented in this slide, and depending on the day and the action being taken, their approach and perspective can change. So some of the things we did to manage change was, one of the things was collaboration, and that's been a big part of our process. So in this picture you see the Housing Access Center and Coordinated Access team mapping how we manage different processes, and what you don't see further down in the room is also municipal housing development and our programs team and a bunch of folks, and we mapped basically everything. We've tried to spend more time getting our teams together. So in this photo, you can see our bylaw enforcement and our programs teams and some students from King's University who are doing some work with us. But we found it really important just to get people together. A lot of the challenges that we hear from our team is frustration with other teams when they don't know what the other team's doing. So just sitting down to have those conversations is important. And then just trying to create opportunity for people and figure out, you know, processing applications all day or answering the phone at Coordinated Access all day can be really challenging, and I think our teams are getting really burnt out with telling people that there's no options for them. So I've just been working with my team to figure out what they would like to do and learn about. So this is a couple of my team members on a train going to Toronto for a training. We've tried to find some opportunities to have fun. So this is, again, all of our teams doing an egg drop challenge where you package an egg up and drop it and hope it doesn't break. And yeah, just, you know, for an afternoon to do some learning and let loose a bit. We try to find opportunities to eat together and to celebrate, and this is an activity we did on Burrito Bowl Potluck Day where everybody brought in pictures of themselves as babies and we had to guess who they were. And then we try to make room for making mistakes. So poor Anne-Marie broke her egg here, but we know that if we're going to make bold changes and do things we haven't done before, that it's not going to be a process without problems. So, so that's it for me. Thank you very much. Sorry, I should have closed this.
That was awesome. Give it up for Emily. Emily, right? Oh, man.
Jesse.
Jesse? Is that the bot? That was the coolest. I don't see mine here.
Just go to the desktop.
Go to the desktop. Isn't it fun when you can hear the guy thinking out loud as he's on the computer? Yes, I'm on the desktop. This one?
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. Awesome. How's that? Good? Awesome. So thanks for having me today. We're here to talk about homelessness to RGI with enhanced home help supports. I am extremely optimistic about the conversations that I have just heard. Really, the argument that I want to make to you today is that community housing is the single most underutilized asset in our homelessness system. We have all kinds of conversations. I've been coming to this conference for about 10 years about chronic homelessness and ending encampments, and that's all great and fine work. But if we're not providing access for low and medium acuity individuals experiencing homelessness, we're actually creating more chronic homelessness and we're perpetuating the problem. So we're really, really passionate about this, and I'm excited to share it with you. In case you cannot see my face, this is also my face, and this is also my colleague Tiffany's face. So I am the manager of homelessness and supportive housing in Halton region, and so my portfolio starts from unsheltered homelessness and encampments all the way up to our wait list, our social housing wait list. So this has been a passion project for me for 5 or 6 years, is to really, how do I say this nicely, have more authority over the wait list components, because homelessness is my true passion. And Tiffany is the keeper of all things, coordinated access and housing stability. So she's doing everything to keep people housed and then housing them through our coordinated access system. So I guess what I want to say is that we're very integrated in terms of the wait list functions and the homelessness functions, which I think is pretty cool and pretty unique. So Halton region at a glance, where we cover the cities of Burlington, the towns of Halton Hills, Milton, and Oakville. Our population is almost 600,000, which is quite large, and this is sort of where we're situated in Ontario. I would say, generally speaking, we're a fairly conservative area. I think that's the nicest sort of way to say it. We're also one of the wealthiest areas in Canada, which has the inverse sort of relationship of probably the area with the greatest economic disparity in the country, which I think is a pretty shocking thing, and that's sort of the climate that we're working in. So, I think it's amazing what we've talked about so far today in terms of the priorities and accessing the wait list. It's hard for me to explain how shocking what I'm about to say is to a conservative sort of element that we're coming from, but that's sort of the environment that we're dealing with. So, what does homelessness look like in Halton? During COVID, or pre-COVID, we had only a handful of individuals really in overflow hotel situations, primarily families, 20 to 25, and then we'd have a handful of singles. With COVID-19, we not only had an explosion of the number of individuals experiencing homelessness, but the social distancing and all that great stuff that you guys know all about really became a shocking issue. So we went from a handful of individuals in hotel to more like 180 people in hotel, which was really challenging to even wrap my brain around that we had that big of an explosion. Oakville and Burlington are the second and the 7th most expensive municipalities in the country to rent an apartment. So we used to really be able to rely on the private market, use housing allowances, use rapid rehousing to get individuals into housing. That is almost impossible as I come to talk to you today, and that is even more of a reason why we have to use community housing more effectively, more appropriately, and just more. Maybe not 9 out of 10, but more. Definitely more. So prior to COVID, there was no real meaningful connection at all between homelessness and community housing. So in Ontario, when the Housing Services Act was sort of created or downloaded to us, there was a priority of 1 in 10. And I thought when I was a junior staffer at Halton, oh, that's great. I'm so happy to hear we have 1 in 10 individuals experiencing homelessness going into community housing. That is actually a huge lie. There were almost no individuals experiencing homelessness going into actual housing. That's because of the way the legislation works, the way that the legislation is then interpreted by staff, and then on the ground, really nothing was happening. So when we realized this is the case, it really prompted us to rethink what the legislation says and what the legislation doesn't say. And I think that's really what I would like to emphasize today is interpret the legislation in the broadest possible way to help people. That's what I would really like us to do. So the by name list. The by name list numbers were rapidly increasing as our encampments were sort of exploding, really. On the by name list, so what I'd like you to pay attention to is, so right now our by name list is sitting just over 200 individuals. But as Tiffany comes and she starts to talk to you about our plan, she's going to tell you how many individuals we housed in 1 year through our priority and try to situate that number with the idea that there's about 200 people on the by name list. So keep that number in mind when she tells you what she's about to tell you. Our total population of individuals experiencing homelessness is more like 500 if we take the sort of point in time count approach. 200 are really the individuals who are engaged with a case manager in a shelter or outside and ready to be housed. With that, I will turn it over to Tiffany.
Okay. Hi, folks. Thanks for having us. So, as Daryl was just saying, with the rise in encampments, our shelters were at 100% capacity at all times. We have overflow spaces that are now busting at the seams. So, naturally, our outflow is going to be completely stagnant. So, at this point, it's the beginning of the pandemic, our senior leadership said, effective immediately, we want you to start filling all RGI vacancies through the by name list. So, as you can imagine, we were really excited. You know, our job, it's mixed, but we were really excited. It's our job to house people experiencing homelessness. So we were like, oh my gosh, like this is our opportunity. This is our once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to create a program that could stick, where we actually see reductions in homelessness. But in the same breath, we were absolutely terrified. It's community housing modernization, so we certainly don't want to de-incentivize housing providers from working with us. At this point, we hadn't received any SSRF funding at that point, so we need to leverage existing resources to house folks through the by name list in RGI housing. And it was really, really busy. I mean, it was the beginning of the pandemic. It was a really scary time. Everyone's wearing masks. You know, we're not supposed to be going out. It was really scary. So we were getting these daily messages from public health talking about mitigating virus transmission. So there was a lot going on. But we really quickly pulled everyone together, and we started referring folks to RGI housing. And I can say in that 2-year period, we housed 155 households directly from homelessness into RGI housing. And I actually have some raw footage on what that looked like. It was a time. So what did we find? And I mean, generally speaking, and I'm going to be super transparent here, generally speaking, community housing providers do not want to house people experiencing homelessness. They don't. And I know no one knows this better than this group, but the issues that led to someone's homelessness are still very much alive and well once they're housed. And we referred 100% of the people that we referred to this program were connected to case management. But it wasn't enough. Like we found out right away it was not enough. We received an overwhelming number of complaints from landlords. So, and of course, we were prepared for the typical complaints, right? Like noise complaints, rent arrears, parties, guests, damages, things like that. We were ready. We knew that was going to happen. What we weren't necessarily ready for was a lot of the complaints, most of the complaints, were as a result of the condition of the unit. So the cleanliness of the unit, the smells coming from the units, bugs coming from the units. Really things that were more life skills related. So what do we do? So we have to remember here, like our goal, of course, is to house people experiencing homelessness, and we want to keep them housed. But really, we wanted to keep this program. Like we just wanted to keep some sort of iteration of this program. So the first thing that we did is rapidly respond to any concerns that landlords had. Like if we got a call or an email from a landlord, we were like putting up the bat signal, and we were bringing everyone in. We were meeting with the landlord, we were bringing all community service providers, because we really wanted to keep this program, and we really want to keep these folks housed. And through that, we created something called an enhanced home support program that basically teaches folks the life skills that they need to stay housed. And I'm really hoping that this video works. Actually, wait, hold on. This is Sandy Reese, sorry. This is Sandy Reese. She works for Links to Care, which is a not-for-profit in Halton, and this is basically her brainchild. Like she was, she worked with most of these clients and was, screaming and yelling from the rooftops that this is what we needed, and we were receiving the complaints as well. So I thought, or we thought, who better to speak to this than the person who's doing this work.
I'm Sandy Reese, Community Navigator with Links to Care, a nonprofit agency in Halton Region. It was through our relationship with Halton Region Coordinated Access that we were chosen to develop the Enhanced Home Support Program, which is a life skills program. It came out of the realization that individuals and families were emerging from homelessness, being housed in RGI and subsidized units, but were at risk of being evicted because some of them were lacking in the life skills needed to maintain their unit. So sometimes the paperwork wasn't being done to keep their subsidy, and other times there were complaints from neighbors and landlords that there were odors coming from the unit or fruit flies swarming around the doorway. Once referred, the participant is assigned a community navigator and an enhanced home support worker. We go and meet with the participant in their home to complete an assessment with them. We use the clutter rating scale to rate the situation and sometimes ask Halton Region's Housing Stability Fund for assistance with a deep clean, which is sometimes biohazard. They're asked to establish a few goals around a few critical areas in their home and in their life, which are most important to getting organized and keeping their home clean. So some goals may be organizing paperwork and appointments because the CRA and housing renewal notices are mixed up with the pizza flyers, or making sure dishes and garbage are done in a timely manner. The key is that the participant is doing just that, participating. This is not Molly Maid. The participant is expected to be engaged in the weekly visits with the enhanced home support worker to establish routines and make them habits. Most people agree to a standard 12-week program, and a few have repeated the program because it was really helpful. Now that the program's been running for about a year and a half, I can say with confidence that it has been successful in keeping people housed and avoiding another episode of homelessness. And I'm looking forward to continuing.
Isn't she great? Yeah, she's great. So I'm just going to go through this really, really quickly. So with the Enhanced Home Support Program, there's 3 streams. Stream 1 is low needs. So they have they score very low in the clutter scale. So after once a week of one-on-one, about an hour and a half support, within 6 weeks, usually clients are okay to maintain the unit on their own. Stream 2, mid to high needs. These folks are probably going to need a little bit more prep work. They score a little bit higher on the clutter scale, so they might need a deep clean, which the housing stability benefits will pay. Like we'll pay for that. Sometimes they have more challenges in one area, so oftentimes you'll see maybe the kitchen's like in decent shape, but the bathroom's a disaster. So they need skills in certain areas. But usually with a good clean, perhaps some junk removal, and with 3 months of one-on-one support, once or twice a week, folks are usually okay at the end. And then there's the 3rd stream, which is very high needs, very high on the clutter scale, substantial upfront support is required. Sometimes there's a large junk removal. We might need some hoarding support in there, and always a deep clean. So this will be 2 staff, twice a week for 3 months. Sometimes they'll cycle through it again, depending on the client. And these folks usually might need some long-term support in that regard as well. So, so we launched this program originally to address folks, or to help folks in RGI housing. We've actually expanded it system-wide. So anyone that we house through coordinated access, if it's identified while they're in shelter, they're probably going to need some support. We'll just do, like when we do the by name list referral, we'll just do the enhanced home support referral as well. We're also doing it with our Housing Stability Fund team, and our homelessness prevention team. So if someone is calling in and they are at risk of eviction because of the condition of their unit, and we can verify that they're truly at risk of eviction, then we'll loop this program in as well. Quick case study here. So this is Steve. This is a real situation. Was living in a rooming house, precariously housed, turned 65, and this was at the beginning of the pandemic. We put him forward to the COVID-19 priority, and pretty quickly he was on the social housing landlord radar for the cleanliness of his unit. He was falling behind in his rent, incomplete paperwork, which one of my colleagues up here had addressed as well. So they were at risk of losing their subsidy. So we referred to the Enhanced Home Support Program, and the first thing they did is, they got Steve some basic cleaning supplies. They supported him in teaching him how to maintain his unit. After you cook, you wash the stove, things like that. Really, these really basic skills that a lot of these folks truly just don't have. Teaching him how to put forward a maintenance request. He had a leaky faucet that he had no idea that, like a landlord actually should come and do that. And because he was falling behind in his rent, it was looking at organizing his paperwork. So having a system, getting him a calendar, so things like that. So what's the difference between case management and enhanced home support? Case management, like the way we look at it is case management. It's longer term support that's heavily focused on connecting clients to their circle of care. And connecting with landlords. Enhanced home support is time limited. One-on-one, intensive, time-limited support that's heavily focused on life skills development, setting clients up for success.
Nice. Tiffany's the best. She has a really hard job. What happened? Calls regarding tenancy concerns drastically decreased. Not to zero, but they've decreased drastically. And when we get a request from a landlord, there's an increased level of respect. There's an increased level of patience because they know we have a resource that they can actually use that will help them. Bad news. So it worked so well that I got this message from public health that was sort of like, hey, great news, we're opening back up. COVID is over. And I'm in the back of my head, I'm like, oh shit, we're gonna lose the priority. What do we do now? So I would get an email from senior management sort of like, hey, COVID's over. Are you gonna sunset the COVID priority? And I would just said, yes, we're going to look into it. And then not respond to anyone for like 6 months until I got the next email. And eventually it was sort of like, you will sunset it on X date. If you have a better suggestion, you can come up with one, but you have to end the COVID priority. So, and I think that was appropriate. So the great news is that we were able to do a review during that time that I was sort of stalling senior management. And really what that allowed us to do is look at what was the success of taking individuals directly from homelessness into RGI units, and how might we be able to think about doing it a slightly different way. I think what we found is that by and large, low and medium acuity individuals had great success with the home support program. They were really, really able to stabilize. Their unit got clean. Landlords were happy. Individuals that we were taking from encampments or from really chronic stays in shelter, this is still not enough support for what they need, right? So we already know the answer for chronic homelessness. It's permanent supportive housing. We know that, right? The problem is as individuals with low and medium acuity are not served through community housing, where do they go? They end up finding their way into permanent supportive housing that they don't really need. Permanent supportive housing is gold in this business, and we have to find a way to protect it for only the most vulnerable, only the ones with the highest needs. So what we decided to do is pivot on the demographics that we were selecting for the priority. So what do we do? Permanent changes were needed to better meet the needs of residents were recommended to council. We replaced our existing homelessness priority with a coordinated access priority, which is similar 1 in 5. And when I say 1 in 5, I mean 1 in 5. I don't mean this public bureaucratic speak. I mean 1 in 5 individuals will be experiencing homelessness. And then we looked at our existing policies and procedures during COVID to sort of see what needs to change and what maybe could we do slightly different, and how do we fund it. Which is always the most fun thing. So our new coordinated access priority. So what is it? It's actually a form of second stage permanent housing. So what we would do is take our individuals who are in a transitional or supportive housing program in the community where they have completed the program. Those are the individuals that we're putting forward to the RGI units who will probably need a low or moderate level of support. So that's what's sort of there. And then we've also got seniors who are 65 and plus. Those individuals who are in a transitional program or who are very stable in shelter are being triaged very quickly into these RGI units. So far in 2023, we've just started doing this. We've had 25 individuals so far with almost 0 complaints from this cohort, so that is a really, really good sign. Again, case management is an automatic referral, so this just happens automatically. If you would like the RGI unit, you have to agree to receiving these sort of supports. So, legislatively speaking, I'm not also going to get into depth on how this is possible, but if you want to talk later, you can. In Ontario, there are very specific rules around how to do this that I'd prefer not be recorded. So, how does this work? The caseworker in the transitional supportive housing program will complete an application, which is just sort of, here's my individual, here's their HIFIS ID, here's how long they've been on it. It's similar to a domestic violence sort of priority. Our staff at the region will review it and then ensure that the right supports are put in place beforehand so they can do the meet and greet, they can do all that stuff before they move in. We make the RGI offer, and then the wraparound supports continue. So we're targeting about 50 individuals per year, which if you remember our by name list numbers of 200, that's a pretty healthy chunk of our community housing stock that will be going towards individuals experiencing homelessness. And that's it. Thank you very much, and look forward to some questions.
Excellent. Thank you to all the presenters. One more round of applause, please, for those presentations. So we've got roughly 20-25 minutes for question and answers, and we've got a mic here that I was instructed on how to use. Here we go. We've got Sue, who's a Rooma ambassador. Thank you, Sue. So if you have a question, put your hand up, stand up, get a hold of Sue. She'll come over with the microphone, and you can ask one of the presenters.
Hi. So I have a question for two of the presenters. So Jesse, you had mentioned that, and I don't know if I got this right, but I thought you had said that your process is 80% of actual market rent instead of average market rent. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's something new?
That is correct. It's not on there. It's on the whole time, sorry.
So if somebody has a market rent unit that is significantly above AMR for that municipality, you'll pay 80% of that?
Darlene, we're from the same municipality.
I know. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, so this is a new rent supplement, the new rent supplement system that was just approved by council at the beginning of October. So it does apply to our Housing First programs, including yours. As well as the other rent supplement programs. So we're trying to streamline it, so regardless of which program you go into, the calculation is the same, the form is the same, it's less confusing for everybody. So I'm happy to share that report with you and the details of what that'll look like. It was just approved, so we're just starting to roll it out, and it's a really big system change, so it's going to take a bit of time, but our Housing First program should be getting it first and very soon.
And will that apply to COB as well, or only municipal?
So COB, for people who don't know, is the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit, and that's out of our hands because it's a provincially funded rent supplement. However, they did move from 80% AMR to 100% AMR recently, this past year.
Excellent. Okay, sorry. Can I ask one of Daryl? Sorry, so you had mentioned that you're now shifting to have lower acuity people who are taking up space in supportive housing into RGI. Yep. I'm going to pontificate for a moment. To me, the simplest thing to solve a lot of our homelessness issue right now is to be moving people from RGI housing who need no support into market where all they need is money, and then move the higher acuity people into RGI housing. Is that what you're hoping to do? Was this the first step towards that, or?
That's a great question. Again, so it's not something that's legislatively, permittable. That's not necessarily a barrier for me. But I don't. My experience would be that people are generally speaking not interested in leaving community housing. I don't know what other communities' experiences are. We've offered COB to portable housing allowances. We've offered actually the sun and the moon and the stars to individuals to leave. They're really not interested in it. So I think that is smart. What we're pontificating on is actually in the future using community housing, transitional housing leases that could potentially allow us the opportunity for individuals to exit. It's something we're thinking about, but we're not quite there yet.
Hi, I got two little quick ones too. For the City of Toronto, the choice-based program that you were talking about, for the people that are put on the priority list, if they are given the opportunity to view and then they deny the unit, are they reprioritized, or is there a punitive sort of response to that? because that kind of happens in Newfoundland sometimes.
Yeah, thanks. So we do have to stay within the HSA, which is our legislation that governs our work. So we do have a single offer rule. However, we have built in some flexibility for victims of violence, as well as for individuals experiencing homelessness, as well as some other exceptions. And then there's also an internal review option. So if someone would like to dispute the decision or the outcome, we have a mechanism to revisit some decisions.
All right, thank you. And I just have one about the EHS as well. Just based on that, is that an occupational therapist model for staffing, or is it case managers, or how do we know that? Because I got people that work for me that can't clean the kitchen, so I don't know if I'd trust them in people's house.
So sorry. My question.
He didn't answer yet.
So in Ontario, there's home and community care, and in theory, the healthcare system should have been doing this work the entire time, right? It's such an obvious and silly thing to have to say. However, what we were finding is they would say, "Oh, there's a year wait list. We'll come help you clean in a year," which is not only insane for someone, not experiencing homelessness. If you're fresh into a unit, you need support like yesterday. So we've funded it through the region, but generally speaking, they're the same qualifications as someone who works for the healthcare system.
Thank you.
Hi. I have a question for Halton. So it sounds like you are using your RGI as a move-on strategy from supportive housing when people no longer need that level of support. Have you created a local priority for that through coordinated access for RGI housing?
Yes, so that's what the coordinated access priority is. It's, we have coordinated access. Is it just called a
priority status?
So we have coordinated access, the concept of coordinated access, and then through our rent geared to income housing, or HATCH, we call it Halton Access to Community Housing, we have a coordinated access priority that flows people through, that moves people along the housing continuum. So they're housed through coordinated access into one of our 10 supportive housing providers, and then once they're ready to move on, they can complete the HATCH coordinated access priority, and then our team would review it, and then we would move them along.
And is there a number that you're taking from that priority? Is it 1 out of 5? Or?
Yes. Yep, 1 out of 5.
Okay. Thank you.
And can I just jump in to say that in the City of Toronto, we have created a local priority for folks who are in supportive housing and who no longer require supports through the priority stream.